Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast, and welcome to our spoiler-free review for Disney's Snow White. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? Hello, I'm J-Law, but you can call me Justin. And if you're joining us for the first time, well, we are Geekcentric, a podcast covering the world of movies, TV shows, toys, collectibles, gaming, and all things geek-centric. Joining me today for this magical, enchanted, spoiler-free review, he's often happy, never grumpy, but always dopey, Mr. Darcy Hudson. How are you?
That's probably one of the best intros, I think. So on point and so accurate.
I know.
I'm doing good.
Yeah, you still feeling happy after watching some Snow White?
Yeah, I gotta say this movie was far better than I was expecting it to be.
Yeah, I
So
was
yeah,
surprised.
it was a nice surprise.
Yeah, I was definitely surprised, and we will be getting into it. But first, I thought we could quickly chat about. We didn't really talk too much about our experience. Well, to let our listeners know, last week we were lucky enough to be invited to a little soiree, if you will, here in Toronto. Disney Studios Canada was hosting a Snow White event here in Toronto at the famous Casa Loma. If you know it, if you're from Toronto, you know what Casa Loma is. For those who aren't from Toronto, it's a castle that's in Toronto. I'm pretty sure Darcy has more knowledge about the history about it in regards to how a castle was in Toronto. But all this to say, it made the perfect backdrop for a Snow White event, and we were invited to see what they had in store. It's actually an experience that they opened up from March 10th to March 21st, which we're at the end now of that experience. But it was a March break experience that allowed people to go and see costumes and interact with certain elements from the movie, which was really like it was really cool to see what they were actually able to accomplish in that space.
Yeah, it was really neat because I've been to Castle Loma a few times, but it's always been in certain areas, and this one seemed like it was really opened up, and you got to explore like almost all of the castle, which was really cool.
Yeah, it definitely felt like they took liberty of all of the castle, or everything that made sense, right? Like there's
Yes.
an underground portion to it, and they played with the idea of the dwarves and mining and so on, and I thought that was really smart. It was tailored really well, and there was a, what do you call it, Darcy, an aerial silk show? Or
Yes, yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yeah, and
We got
it's
that the premiere of the new song from the movie, and
yes,
a whole silk show to go with it.
yeah.
It's really quite something to experience.
Yeah, we have a reel on our Instagram at We Are Geekcentric that I put together, just kind of highlighting some of the cool moments. There's also a ton of coverage of it online from all of our friends who we were able to connect with while we were there. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. So huge thanks to Disney Studios Canada for inviting us out for that experience. It really did kind of set the palette for this movie and getting us a little more buzzed about it in terms of just talking about it, thinking about how this movie was going to be, because as you mentioned, we were both very surprised by it, given, you know, let's not hide from it. There's a lot of online banter. There's already an online anticipation. The fandom is already ready to say this movie sucks. I think before, maybe it's a bit of a spoiler, but I'm happy to say that I don't think that's the case,
Yeah.
but we'll get into it. But first, let's get you up to date with the synopsis here. Disney's Snow White, a live-action musical reimagining of the classic 1937 film, opens exclusively in theaters March 21st, 2025, starring Rachel Ziegler in the title role and Gal Gadot as her stepmother, the evil queen. The magical music adventure journeys back to the timeless story with beloved characters Bashful, Doc, Dopey, Grumpy, Happy, Sleepy, and Sneezy. Disney's Snow White is directed by Mark Webb, featuring all new original songs from Benj Pasek and Justin Paul. As mentioned, this movie is opening March 21st. A huge thanks to our friends again at Disney Studios Canada for inviting us out early to watch the film for review. Now, I did mention that this is spoiler free. However, if you've seen the original film, there's not much to spoil, really. In all honesty, there are a couple surprises, but there's nothing huge. So we will be talking about it in the context of maybe aspects from the original film. If you haven't seen that and you don't want to be spoiled, then I would advise you to leave now. But we're going to be referencing that film because it's been around since 1937. If you haven't seen
It's
it,
almost
then
90 years old now, so I
it's
feel like
90 years
it's
old.
safe
Yeah,
to
there's a
talk about.
reason why they're remaking this movie now. So yeah, let's get into it. As always, we're going to kind of start things off talking about the look, the feel, the idea of bringing this animated classic to life through live action and what that looked like. Darcy, how did you feel about the look of this film?
Again, this is another thing that's kind of pleasantly surprised me was how much I liked the look, because early looks at the dwarves or magical beings or whatever they're referred to in this movie,
Mhm.
I was a bit worried because they were very cartoonish. But when we see the world they're in, it feels very fantastical and whimsical, much like that original movie. So I think they do a really good job of bringing that anime classic to life, especially with some of those darker scenes. The whole chasing through the woods scene is
Mhm.
translated beautifully to this movie as well. So
Yes.
there's a lot of homage,
Yeah.
but then, like, again, modernizing it for a live action audience, which I think really worked.
Like I'm totally with you. I think this is an interesting part because I think look and feel. There's parts that worked for me and there's parts that didn't. So I'll start with what worked. I think the film is just there's such a vibrancy to it, and I think this really comes off of the heels of something like Wicked. With Wicked, there was a lot of talk about how muted some of the color grading was, and there was this whole online discussion about it lacked a sense of vibrancy that you almost remember from the original Wizard of Oz.
Hmm.
And I think, like you just said, like the animated world, there was already a sense of vibrancy there. Obviously, over time, that's become more muted in pastel, I think, and over time. But for that time, it was vibrant, it was colorful,
Hmm.
it was rich, and I think that this film very much captures a lot of that. I think it captures a lot of that vibrancy. It's bringing classic elements to life with rich color and very stunning visuals and a very magical atmosphere. However, I still feel like even with all of that and even the fantastic costumes, the costumes were great. I really do think like even the Evil Queen costume was really well done, and
Hmm.
and some of the sets felt immersive and built, but it's the overused CGI that I sometimes felt was a little distracting. And I think that comes with a lot of these live action Disney movies is this ballet of practical with CGI. There is a lot of that, and it might have really lived in a lot of, like you were saying, Darce, with our dwarvish friends, and how heavily CGI they were. We'll talk about them in story a little bit more, but I think that's something that kind of detracted for me. While they still nailed a lot of it, like that shot of her in the forest, like going from the darkness into the light,
Hmm.
when she's being chased by the trees, and then when she gets on the other end, and it's serene, it's vibrant, it's like the epitome of like dark to light. It's so pretty. So there's some stuff that really worked, but yeah, I think sometimes that CGI, it just felt overly artificial at times, and it made moments a little less impactful at certain points. But I don't know if that's much of just this idea that movies can get too dependent on those things as a reliant element. They don't trust the practical as much. You know what I mean? I'm not
Hmm.
sure.
I mean, I think what I again really liked is the fact that a lot of this CG stuff is focused on more the magical forest aspect
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
story,
yeah.
which kind of makes it feel, again, it feels separate and feels like it's of its otherworldly almost, and that's why I kind of
Hmm.
maybe where I was okay with some of that
Yeah,
CG
I see what you
overuse,
mean.
because it added to that fact, that idea that these are just humans stepping into the magical world and kind of interacting with these dwarves and stuff like that as they try and figure out the issue with the evil queen. So I thought it was a really cool way to kind of marry the practical effects of like the town and all, and the kingdom into this kind of magical forest idea. But that's just me. I don't know. I kind of
No, that's
enjoyed
good.
that.
I like that. I like that we can kind of both take away something different from that experience, right? I think
Hmm.
again, I think they nailed aspects of this spot on, and like you were saying, like that whole sequence of her being chased in the forest and that darkness, like I like the way they translated that, even though that was probably the most CGI thing. I was okay with it there, but then
Hmm.
there's other elements where it's just like, and again, I think it might have had to do with the dwarves and how they were depicted. Their characters and their persona were great, and we'll talk about them in a little bit. But I think the other part too that really stood out was the music. I think the music
Hmm.
was adapted beautifully. I love the new songs from Ben Pasek and Justin Paul. I think they did such a great job of finding a way to honor the sort of classic Disney style while bringing something that felt very modern. Like Waiting on a Wish, performed by Rachel Ziegler, is absolutely fantastic. It's I think I even when I heard that track leading into the event that we went to last week, I was like, actually, you know what, that's not that bad. Like
Hmm.
but again, it's Rachel. Like she's so good, and again, something else we'll talk about. But yeah, the music was great. It was all put in the right place. It didn't feel overstuffed or too much of a crutch, if you will, for to help drive the narrative. It felt like it was placed appropriately. And yeah, I think that really worked for it, is bringing in something new into from a musical point of view.
Yeah, especially off the heels of watching the original, where the songs are they are timeless, but they are of an era very much so. These new takes on the songs and the kind of way they spin them into their own originals is again a beautiful way to pay homage to what came before while modernizing it for a new audience. Because I feel like if you listen to the soundtrack of this movie, it's right up there with the soundtrack from a Frozen or a Moana, where
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just a new Disney princess movie, and just it a lot of the songs just really work for me. I was again pleasantly surprised by that because not knowing like, original songs. Sorry, adding original songs to such a classic movie is a bold choice to take, and
Mhm.
the fact that there is so many, it's not just one or two. It feels like there's almost a whole overhaul to the soundtrack from that first movie, and I think every song does a much better job of again modernizing what came before. So it was really cool
Yeah.
to experience that.
Yeah, they mixed, right? Like they
Hmm.
definitely pulled songs from the original, adapted them, and put them in this new live action adaptation, and then they added some new elements as well. And
Hmm.
Rachel Ziegler, she killed it. Let's
Killed it.
let's
She killed it.
let's get into performances, because honestly, it's where I want to start. Like, as we're saying, like Rachel Ziegler shines in this leading role. I think she just effortlessly carries this film, and with such warmth and relatability. I think her vocals, we all know that she's a vocal powerhouse. She knows how to sing, and she takes
Hmm.
on these roles that allow her to just elevate musical moments. And I just think it captured the spirit of the original, while she was able to bring her own unique touch to the role of Snow White. I think that that's what was so crucial. And we were talking about it after. And for me, what's just so beautiful about her performance is her ability to perform singing and acting, like to do the theater stage thing of emoting through your performance while also
Hmm.
singing. I think that in my mind those two things feel so detached, but when you watch her, they are so interconnected with how she brought Snow White to life. I think it was so well done.
Yeah, I mean, the way that she looks like she's actually singing in these takes, even though we know it's probably pre-recorded and done in post, is just the feelings that you get. Like you can tell, you feel like she's singing in that moment out and like just giving it her all. And the way she's again acting through it all on top of it is just incredible. She was definitely the lead for a reason in this movie, and I just love that the take they took this character in so she could really stretch her acting chops entirely. So it was a brilliant performance from Rachel.
Yeah, and it's something that we keep saying, you know, it's a modernization, or it's a modern touch to something that's so classic. Like, when you watch Snow White, we both, we both watched Snow White as a bit of a primer to get us reset for this live action adaptation. And, that's a film. it's done in, as we said, 90 years ago, 1937. It's an old film, and it shows its age, but it's memorable for, its history in film, the impact that it had on animation, the impact it had on Walt Disney and the studio, so on and so forth. But they were able to take so many elements, and adapt it so well. And Rachel was able to take a Snow White character and adapt her for today. That makes
Hmm.
a lot more sense, and I think that comes in part from a good story, and just at
Oh
least a good
yes, for
structure in
sure.
terms of writing her. But let's talk about the evil queen here as well. Gal Gadot. For me, this performance just didn't work. Like I was saying to you guys, I was saying to you before when we were leaving, at the beginning I was kind of surprised because she was really leaning into the acting and it
Hmm.
felt natural. And Gal Gadot, like, I think I've never really been a fan of her acting. I think she's very just like very like, her characters don't feel different from one another. They just
It's very
all
one note.
feel one note.
Yeah.
Exactly. So this felt like this was going to be a real great opportunity for her to kind of step out of that and show something. And she did, but it also felt really artificial. It didn't feel authentic. It didn't feel like she felt like she was playing rather
Yeah.
than believing. And I think that that was something that stood out in her performance. And she does show glimpses of something extremely notable. Like, her singing in this is really really great. Like, she delivers those
Fantastic
notes.
villain song.
Yeah,
Like,
and she dances, but I think that might have been where she suddenly was just like, well, I'm just going to go extra theatrical with this queen. It was the moments where she was a little more quiet and a little more
yes.
like, like sort of acting a little bit more with her body language and less with her words and her mouth, and maybe from using her eyes a little bit more. That felt like it was a bold take for her to step out of this one note acting beat, but it didn't last. It just became overly theatrical. It just made the character feel exaggerated rather than menacing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
I,
Yeah.
I totally agree with you because the beginning of the movie, it's almost she's hiding the fact that she's evil, but as the movie goes on, the evilness comes more to the surface, and with that, almost this campiness that just doesn't fit against comparing it against Rachel Ziegler's Snow White, which again
Yes.
is supposed to be the comparison, and the entire time she just feels like a joke. Like I understand having fun with the role, but
Mhm.
I feel like she took that fun too far, and again took away that menacing factor from the evil queen. So
Yeah, you
yeah.
nailed it. You nailed it. You nailed it there. Rachel brings the grounded nature to Snow White,
Hmm.
and then Gal took the evil queen and just went like theatrical with it. And that's opposites in my mind in the way
Yeah.
we look at it, because their approach was different. Even in the moments when they acted off of each other, you could see who was more grounded and comfortable in their role, and that was Rachel
Hmm.
versus Gal, who felt like she had to be exaggerated. Right, she based her character more off of a cartoon rather than sense of evil. So this is a Snow White film, and rightfully so. Rachel does carry this film quite a bit. There is another performance that was listed here, which is Andrew Burnap, who plays John,
Yep.
which is obviously a take on, is it Prince John? Who
I
is it?
believe so.
Yeah,
Yeah, because
it was Prince
she's waiting
John,
for
right?
her prince in the
Correct.
first movie or in the animated
Yes.
movie.
Yes, in the animated movie. So he is, the live action take on Prince John. I do like what they did with his character. I don't want to
Hmm.
necessarily spend too much time talking about him, but he
Yeah.
was actually charming. I thought he was
Very
charming.
much so,
Yeah.
100%. He fits the role of a Disney prince in the modern
Yeah.
era, where he's very witty and just a sly talker, and just again he fits right up there with like a Flynn or a Kristoff, anything from those recent 3D
Yes.
movies. So
Yeah.
yeah, I loved his performance. He did a great job of again giving us a character we didn't get much of in the original
Mhm.
animated series or movie. Sorry,
Yes.
so that was cool.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. He actually matters more in this film, and I think again that's another take on that story piece. But we did have seven dwarves, who, again, like you said, they're not called dwarves. They're never referenced as dwarves. Even the movie is called Snow White, not Snow White and the Seven Dwarves. So
Hmm.
they're obviously trying to get away from labeling these characters like that. But I think without Disney coming in and saying, let's call them this from now on, people are still going to call them dwarves because that's the it's a story that's been around long. This film's been around for 90 something years, and yeah, I think that you can't really get away from that unless you give a definition. What they did in this film with these characters was very interesting, and I think some of the performances were okay. I actually didn't
Mhm.
mind some of them as much as I was saying, like, the CGI at times kinda took me out. The performances were okay. Was there any notable, characters that you thought of the 7?
Well, I mean, I liked them, across the board. I thought that, again, the fact that we got to get to know them a bit more past just their names, like in the first movie, and that's, their whole shtick. We got to know a bit more about them as a character, which was cool. And I mean, Bashville, being voiced by Titus Burgess, was a surprise, and he was delightful. Doc being voiced by Jeremy Swift, also fantastic. And again, their rendition of Hi Ho, because of course you can't have this movie without Hi Ho, was just a really fun updated version of that song. We got a bit longer, more fleshed out, and we got to see them, doing their thing in the mines, which is really cool. So yeah, the gnomes across the board really worked for me. Or sorry, dwarves. I'm gonna call them. I'm calling them gnomes now for some reason. It's like really trying to
I
get
don't
away
know.
from that.
I don't know.
Apparently,
I don't know if they'll appreciate that. No, I know, and that's where I think it's like a little awkward. Like I should I be saying dwarves or should I not be saying dwarves?
the
Like
magical
the
beings, like
magical beings. What are they? Right? Like I
yeah.
think that's something that was missing.
Hmm.
We keep tiptoeing around it, or we're kind of talking about it throughout the entire review. Let's just move right into story. But I will just cap off here this conversation with the dwarves were lovely, the performances were lovely,
Hmm.
and I do think Dopey has a special place in my heart.
Oh yeah, for
Just
sure.
saying that. But yeah, let's talk about story. I think the story for this film it keeps true to the magic of the original, but it's incorporating more thoughtful updates that make the narrative feel fresh. I think that's
Hmm.
safe to say.
Yeah.
The way they handle Prince John's character. You mentioned Kristoff's and Flynn's. They're not princes. So I think if anything, that would allude to a different approach to how that character might be handled in this film. That makes sense. But we've been talking about it as well. Like Rachel's performance was so grounded and felt so real because I think the approach to the story of making Snow White was to fill out some of the details. Like we were talking about, there's more context into how Snow White came to be, forgotten, if you will.
Hmm.
In the original, we don't really get that. It just kind of starts off, and then we're in it. There was a little bit more of a setup here, and I really did appreciate that.
I said it afterwards. We were talking with some of the other press people after the screening, and I was just saying that what this movie did with the story is it took it from your typical fairy tale, which kind of glosses over those things, and turned into a proper story where it gave justification and reasoning behind some of these actions and characters, which is again after getting that first movie, which is delightful as a fairy tale. It's really cool to see them take it to a next level, which we haven't seen them do with these past live action adaptations, where sometimes they dance around with the story a bit, but they don't go full like all the way with it. Whereas this clearly Snow White has gone from being the damsel in distress to being a strong heroine leading her own story. And I think it was a brilliant update on the story while staying true to that charming themes that we
And
got in the first one.
and I agree with you. I totally agree with you. But I already hear the internet and fans just crapping down on woke nature. But I think that's you're absolutely right. That's the success of this story. I think
Hmm.
what by making Snow White a heroine rather than a damsel in distress, it signifies that her journey is significant. It means that she has more emotional depth, and she's still able to maintain, and the story is still able to maintain timeless themes of kindness, courage, fairness, adventure. Like it's all the things that fairy tales were meant to do. And to your point, like, and we've talked about, offline, is that you see the significant dated nature of a movie like Snow White from 1937. It's a different time, it was a different world, so we are at a different place now, and I think that this is a story that fits a lot better in being inspiring to girls and to women, and also acknowledging the independence and the strength of women as
Hmm.
well. I think that's something that's beautiful. But I think at the end of the day, like the thing that I appreciate about the story is that it just balances honoring the classic by and modernizing it for today's audience. It's just so it's well handled, and it's proving that live action remakes can enhance original charm rather than just simply retelling it. So I think that this is probably one of the best examples of how you would want to do a live
Yeah,
action
I
adaptation.
was well, when my family asked how I thought the movie was when I got home, the first thing I said was I think it might be my favorite live action so far
Mhm,
because it actually reinvented that story in such a refreshing way that it really feels up to date with the times now. And I feel like this could
mhm.
go on as being like the new classic Snow White for a lot of people, which is really
Sure,
cool.
sure.
Yeah, I will say that the story isn't perfect. Like the first movie, the last act
Correct.
is a bit rushed,
Yes,
but
yeah.
compared to that first movie, we get a lot more of a third act in this
Yes,
one. So I do
yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah, there's the third act is really non-existent in the original, in my opinion.
Yeah,
It's
it
it's
is 10
literally like
minutes, 10 minutes from the
it's a
apple
10-minute
bite to
act.
the end
Yeah,
of the movie,
yeah, I know.
basically.
And for you're absolutely right here. That's where the movie that was what I wrote here is it does fall apart in the third act as much as they try to again just go back to the traditions of how everything kind of happens, and then they kind of switch things up a little bit towards the end there. Um it still felt like it was a mad dash to just wrap this up, but I will say the I guess 80% of the movie leading into that was very well handled, and like we were
Mhm.
saying, does the thing of keeping the keeping the charm of the original while also doing something new at
Yeah.
the same time. It's the right amount. It's the right amount. But look, we've talked about all the things. Let's share our final thoughts that we have and our score, which we're going to be rating out of 1 to 5 poisonous apples.
Oh, I like it.
Is
I like
that
it.
is that does that make sense? I think
That's
that
on
makes
point.
sense. No, I'm
That's
just
on
yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, I think I've pretty much said all I wanted to say. Again, the fact that I said that this is my favorite live action to date, I think speaks volumes because the live actions that have been so hit and miss, and in so many cases, it just really flops almost when they're shot for shot retellings. And the fact that this movie is taking again a nearly 90-year-old film and updating it and changing the story while again capturing all those pivotal moments from the original. I think this is what these remakes should be, is again reinventing a classic story for a modern audience, and that's what this one does fantastically. And again, my only issues being the story kind of falling apart and occasionally some of the CGI being a bit wonky. I think this movie stands a good chance of again reinvigorating hope in these live action remakes. So I'll be giving this one 4 out of 5 poisonous apples.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, like I think not everything in this adaptation works. There's an overuse of CGI like we were talking about. It can make your experience feel a little disjointed. Gal Gadot's performance of the Evil Queen, while having a beautiful voice and striking, it just felt artificial and too over the top in comparison to Rachel. And there's moments when this film leans too heavily on the spectacle rather than just the substance of the film. But that said, there is a lot to love about this film, and Rachel Ziegler is one of them. She just delivers such a fantastic
Hmm.
performance. Again, such warmth, relatability, and just stunning vocals for Snow White. And I think again, as I was mentioning in Look and Feel, while the CGI felt a little artificial at times, it was really great to see such a vibrancy, a visual vibrancy to the picture. It's the music was great, and it all just kind of wraps together to keep that charm. And the narrative updates that they made, they feel meaningful, they feel significant, and it's just modernizing the narrative while respecting the heart of the original. So I'm going to give this one a 3.5 out of 5 poisonous apples. I think it's still good. The third act really does fall apart. But this is still a really good movie. And I may have given Little Mermaid a higher score than this. Little Mermaid hits a bit different for me. So just because of it, but I still think that like I really enjoyed that live action adaptation. I think very much it wasn't perfect as well, but it did a lot of what we were talking about here, where it tried to take what we knew and love and what we know and love about the story and keep the charm, but adapt it for today. It might not have worked for everyone, but uh, even with that film, again, I've said it already on this podcast. We're at a very interesting moment where fandom and the internet just would have you believe that this movie is an absolute disaster, And I think that's not the case. I think, you know, this is one of the better live action Disney remakes, as you said, Darce, and I think this is proving that these adaptations can still capture the magic that we know and love
Hmm.
if they're done right. If they're
Yep.
done right. So if you're on the fence about seeing it, and I encourage you, like, don't listen to the internet,
Give it a
formulate your own
chance.
opinion.
Yeah.
Even don't take our opinion either. Just if you're on the fence and you want to go see it and be the judge of it for yourself. Because I think even with what we saw with Captain America and Brave New World, and how everyone immediately just hated that movie. And it wasn't perfect, but it wasn't as bad as everyone was saying. I think the same thing can be said about this film. I think a lot more people are making a bigger deal out of it. What's nice is that there's been a lot of Twitter reactions online, um,
That
uh,
are positive.
that are positive. I
Yeah.
posted my reaction today, and already I've been slapped by internet trolls, saying, calling me derogatory terms and all sorts of stuff because of the nature of what it is. I'm happy I have a thick skin about it, but you know, it's interesting when you post these reactions and you share your thoughts. I'm used to being called like a Disney shill or a Marvel shill. How much did they pay you and stuff? And it's just that perception. But when you're insulting and being derogatory, yeah, like you can tell that this is something that has like people up in arms about. And it shouldn't. This film is doing something new. And if you don't like, if you're not into that, then you don't have to watch it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not for
Yeah. It's
you.
as simple as that.
It's as simple as that. So, but yeah, that's it. That's it. We got deep there for a second. I think I at least got deep.
You got
I
deep.
just been, I think I got deep because I was just like reading all these comments on this reaction, and I was blocking them all and removing them because they're rude, man. Like some
Yeah.
people are just really,
There's
they take it too far. So just, this is all escapism. This is all fun. It's all subjective too. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah.
Half the time when we like something, most people don't like it. And if we don't like something, most people do like it. So, it's all subjective. And that's just the way it is. That's just the way
Yep.
it is.
Yep.
Well, well, we hope you enjoyed this spoiler-free review for Disney's Snow White, which hits theaters March 21st. Again, a huge thanks to our friends at Disney Studios Canada for inviting us out to the screening and inviting us out to the lovely Casa Loma event. It was absolutely fantastic. But hey, if you want to reach out to us and let us know your thoughts on this movie or anything that we cover, feel free to reach out to us at wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. That's wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. Or you can reach out to us on Twitter at GeekcentricYT or on Instagram and TikTok at wearegeekcentric. Keep in mind, we have a ton of other great episodes for you to listen to right now on podcast feeds, including a lot of interviews. We've got a great amount of interviews. We have our most recent interview with James Marsters, famously known as Spike from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, also known as Lord Piccolo from the not so great Dragon Ball Evolution live action film. He was in Toronto recently for Toronto Comic Con, so we chatted about going to conventions, meeting with fans, the fandom around Buffy, the fandom around Dragon Ball, and a lot more. So that's available on podcast feeds and on YouTube at youtube.com/geekcentric, along with our other interviews, like our interview with Daredevil Born Again director Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, as well as showrunner Dario Scartapane and executive producer Sana Amat. We also have our spoiler-free review for Marvel Television's Daredevil Born Again, which is out now on podcast feeds. We talked about all 10 episodes. We were so lucky to get all 10 episodes to watch. We stay spoiler-free. Trust me. We do have a spoiler-filled episode coming when the finale drops. But speaking of spoiler-filled, we are at the end of Severance. This is the week, guys. This is it. So we have a spoiler-filled episode for Severance. We are excited to talk about it. And that's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to say anymore. I'm not going to say anymore. I'm not going to get us into any more trouble about it. But listen, thanks again, Darcy, for joining me for the spoiler-free review. You are a magical. I don't want to call you a dwarf because you're not a dwarf.
I'd be
You're
a
just a
very tall
magical
dwarf.
being. Yes, you're one of the taller ones. I'm sure there's one called Tall in the group, a very distant cousin.
Human the
Um,
dwarf.
but listen, until next time, as we say,
Leaders.
peace.